Hey guys, welcome to another Visionary Male Leaders Live. I'm Dimitri Wakuf, one of the co-authors in the book and the leadership coach, and I'm here with another co-author who is Phil Bartlett, and the heart of the project, Sarah Bellorini. And today we are going to talk about again leadership, but more specifically, we are going to focus on the chapter of Phil, which is the place you have always wanted to work: vulnerability, trust, and inclusivity as a business strategy. So we're going to focus on that. But first, let's ask Sarah to share with us what was her motivation to ask Phil to be part of the book. Welcome, Sarah.
I'm interested in that, in the answer to that question as well.
Yes, I've got it all written down.
Yeah, you have. I sent it to you yesterday.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, and thanks, Dimi and Phil. It's so amazing to have you here with us. And excuse me. So, to answer Demi's question, why did I invite Phil into this fabulous book of ours? Well, we met through a mutual friend, and this mutual friend is actually part of Phil's team of 65 people. And so I thought, gosh, Phil has an employee, somebody in his team who is putting him forward as a visionary male leader. And for me, that's just spoke volumes. So and then when I spoke to Phil, I found out that he runs a P&L for I'm looking at my notes because I have to get this right. So Phil runs a P&L for the UK office of a global network. And they have a board in New York and New York City, and they ultimately report into Wall Street. So he's got a serious responsibility here. He's also the global inclusivity and diversity lead for CDM. And he's also was the only male speaker and the only man on the organising committee for Omni Woman for 2 or 3 years. And so he was kind of like the token male. And so Phil is a man who really, really walks his talk. And that's essentially why I invited him into the book. He is here to disrupt the patriarchy, and he really believes that this gender issue that we're facing is really a male issue to step up and solve.
Whoa, sounds a very solid reason to ask him in the book. But let's hear now from Phil. What was your motivation to be in the book, Phil?
I think my motivation to be in the book, I guess, comes from my motivation to be a part of these conversations more generally, which is that I'm very aware of my privilege and in the world. So in terms of looking at broad inclusivity and diversity, I kind of, rather than ticking boxes, I kind of cross every box. White, middle-aged, middle class, straight, cisgender, married, quite tall, all of these things that shouldn't matter. I've got 2 kids, I've got a dog, I'm kind of the classic, I am the patriarchy in that sense. I am the man, when you're sticking it to the man, that's me, or that's my kind of place in the world. And so I've been very conscious of that for a long time. I'm also someone who I kind of came into all this through the door of gender equality. And for a couple of reasons, I had very strong women in my life growing up. My wife is an incredibly strong woman. And actually, I think it was having sons that made me think that I've got a really important job to bring up feminists into the next generation, because you get you do find lots of men in conversations who are there for completely the right reasons, but in conversations around diversity and gender equality, particularly, who have who have daughters and see the inequalities and want to change the world for their daughters coming through. My feeling is that no minority group or a group that has been challenged in the world has ever made a change without the support of the majority group. And so I'm the majority group, and so it's my responsibility to step forward and make a change. And it's also my responsibility, as I say, to bring up my feminist boys. A lot of people fight against the word feminism. I embrace it completely. It means if you say to people, and actually I did this, I did a talk at a school on International Women's Day last year or the year before. It must be the year before, because nothing happened. No one went anywhere last year, right? I actually went to a school and did a talk and said, who here would say they're a feminist? This is a very sort of well-known boys' school in London. So I thought, I'm going to speak to the next generation. Who would say they are? Sarah, have you got your phone on? You have, haven't you? Who here would put their hand up and say, I'm a feminist? And there was a couple of kids, no, very, very few. And then I said, well, who believes that women should have exactly the same rights, responsibility, and power as men? And everyone put their hand up. And I said, well, guess what? That's the dictionary definition of feminism. So congratulations, you're now all feminists. And so from now on, so that was my kind of way into the whole thing. And then what I've found over the years is that once you're in a conversation about inclusivity or diversity in any way, you can come in through any door you want, but you're in the room. And so you can't be, inclusivity is inclusive in what it covers. So you end up very quickly in talking, whatever I came in through the gender equality door, you're very quickly talking about race, talking about social mobility, talking about sexual preference. And so that was kind of opened up into all the aspects that you have to have a point of view. You have to start to think, okay, what do I think about that? And how do we make this work across all of the different elements of diversity? Just an additional thing, the reason I talk about inclusivity and diversity rather than D&I, which it often is because that's my focus and that's our focus as an organization. Because diversity is something that you can measure and see. It's almost the end point, but you have to start with inclusivity. You have to start with an inclusive culture, because if you don't do that, if you do it and just focus on getting diverse people, those diverse people may come in, but they may not be able to be themselves and really thrive. And so that's the difference of going, we get an inclusive environment. And then when we do find people with diverse thinking, diverse backgrounds, then they can become part of the organization, part of that inclusive feeling, and they can really become part of it and thrive. So that's it's nuance, but all of it's nuance in a way. So it's kind of important for us to when we talk about it.
Yeah, thank you, Phil, for sharing all of that. And it is so true that it is all nuance, because it's very interesting for me that you bring up that you're saying feminism, and I specifically kind of make a distinction between feminism and feminist. Sorry, feminism.
Yeah.
And feminine.
Yeah.
And it is fascinating because, for me, this is about integrated people who are integrated. So people who are embracing both their masculine and their feminine selves, and their traits, their leadership traits, and integrating that and being a whole person. And it is really interesting because that is an inclusive way to live, I guess, within yourself, isn't it? And if you're able to kind of be more integrated within yourself, then there's that saying, we see the world the way that we are, so when we have that, when we've gone on that inner journey in ourselves, then it really equips us to then, be more integrated and integrating and inclusive externally with those that we come across.
I don't think you're absolutely right. And I think my experience, which I go into a little bit in the chapter, kind of mentioned at the end, was the mistakes that I made along the way, which were understandable mistakes in my leadership journey. For the first, when I was initially became put in a position of leadership, all of the sort of well, in that organization, particularly the people around me, but all the people who you look around and see what does leadership mean? And it was very male. It was very traditionally masculine, hard, certain, never showing any emotion, never showing any doubt, always being, and I felt really uncomfortable with that. That wasn't what I felt, honestly. And so I had to kind of fake some of it. Occasionally I'd let people in a little bit and say, I don't know what I'm doing. I really don't know what I'm doing. Because a lot of the time, we all know there are all times when but it was sort of, be harder. I was told I was too soft. I was told I was too close to people. I let people in too much. And I just thought, I don't see that. I don't agree with that. I don't believe it.
No.
I actually got to the point where if that is what leadership is all about, then maybe it's not for me. Because I found that the strongest relationships I built and had built throughout my life were the ones where I could be totally open and be weak when I needed to be weak, and be vulnerable. Talk a lot about vulnerability, and almost take the balance of traditionally masculine and traditionally feminine traits and put that together into something that felt like me. And so there's no good for me. It's sort of when they're split apart, you go, well, if you've just got the masculine traits, that's not good enough. If you've just got all of the traditionally feminine traits, that's not going to work. It's the blend of those. Sometimes you need to be forthright and strong and stand up and say, look, guys, this is what we're going to be. Sometimes you need to be totally empathetic and consultative and community led. Particularly, I don't see that in all honesty. I kind of reject the break of it in a way. And so my blend by going, I don't see that as masculine. I know that when we're talking about it, we're talking about traditionally masculine, traditionally feminine. Yeah. For me, that's good or bad. It's good or bad, but it's also forward thinking or old school. And I really feel that the traditional, very masculine, very patriarchal leadership is not going to be the leadership that takes us where we need to go in the future. And I think people of our generation have seen those leaders lead badly. And so I really believe that as we come through as the leaders of the world and our organizations, and even more so the people who come after us, it's going to be so much more empathetic, open, thoughtful leadership. You take someone like Jacinta Ardern in New Zealand. She just has gone, just because I'm empathetic doesn't mean I'm weak. And that is like, yes, actually, sometimes being vulnerable is the strongest, really difficult, and it's the strongest thing you can do. And yet some of these supposedly strong male leaders that the world has, especially in the last few years, have come up all over the place. They still lead most of the big organizations in the world, be they political or business, and they don't have the strength to be vulnerable. Actually,
no, they don't.
It's so. Sorry, Demi, did you want to say something?
No. Just keep going. I'm gonna go.
Thank you. So this whole vulnerability piece, Phil, is very, very interesting. And we were talking to Obi about this yesterday. Obi's another one of our authors. For those of you who don't know, obviously Phil does know.
Has he? Yeah. All right.
And it's kind of this misunderstanding of what vulnerability is, or any of these, like trust and the things that you talk about in your chapter, and that everybody talks a lot about in the whole book. And I know that you and I, Phil, have like talked about the analogy of climbing a mountain and going to the top of the mountain and getting to base camp. And, you know, some people don't even know the mountain exists. Some people are not even ready to get to base camp. Some people are at base camp going, holy shit, I'm not acclimatizing, excuse my language. I need to go back and come back next year. And then there are people that are at base camp and they're staying there and they're like, right, I'm here. I get that there's a policy, there's an intellectual understanding. I've got to do this stuff, though. In practice, how do I do that? And yeah, how do I walk my talk? How do I embody it? How do I become that embodied leader that, you know, can use vulnerability, trust, and inclusivity as a business strategy and run a P&L and do all the things that you're doing? So
absolutely. And actually, here the difference is, Phil, that you are doing it from, I mean, in a kind of big organization. You have people around you who are, you know, you're walking the talk, like Sarah said, because it's easy to talk about it. It's easy to talk about it. A lot of people talk about inclusivity, and a lot of people talk about how you can be, you know, empathetic and everything. But it's another thing to be in an organization when you actually implement this thing. And people talk about you, like Sarah said, about your employee. So I just want to pay attention, just to focus a little bit on the book again, and to ask you, tell me what, yesterday the question towards Obi was, what is the superpower of the book? And I want to also ask you, tell me, what makes this book, a lot of books are on leadership. If you go there, it's full. Maybe it's one of the most, you know, the biggest area when people write books right now.
Not all of them get to be bestsellers all around the world, though, right, guys?
Not all of them, not all. But what makes this book a bestseller, and what makes this book very important?
I think the thing that makes this book different, there's a couple of things for me. One is the fact that it's really, truly international. And so it's not just people from, because there's loads and loads of stuff from the US, a good chunk of stuff from the UK, but this is from people in all different parts of the world. So I'm going to actually, I'll wrap all this up. The next bit of it that I think is makes it different and really interesting is the perspectives on it. So there are some that are much more, and every chapter is different and obviously unique, but with a different approach. So some of them are very practical and forward-looking. Some of them are stories about the past. Some of them are actually quite challenging and quite kind of emotional. I think your chapter, Dimi, is kind of, you know, I hadn't thought of things that it's made me go, God, I hadn't thought of it like that. And I think initially reading it, I was like, oh God, it was so different that actually there was a bit of a challenge to like, oh, my chapter feels very different to other people's. Yours feels very different to other people's. And actually, as you go through, you think, actually, that means that there's different ways of chatting, different ways of approaching this, but also there's going to be something in there for a reader who doesn't necessarily think that's what they're there for. And so, in a nutshell, what's that? That's diversity. And genuinely, that is the magic of the book. It's so diverse in its approach, in its style, in the way that people have written things, in the way that people have come to the kind of people there are. Some people, there are coaches, there are people running businesses, there are former soldiers, there are people who are younger, older. You know, I think the thing that brings it all together and why it makes it an urgent conversation to have now is because every single one of them is part of the patriarchy, whether they like it or not. Yeah. And so the fact that it's male leaders saying, this is the journey that I've been on, to your point, Sarah, I'm here on this, you know, if we're all climbing Mount Everest, there's no point in me just being up there and saying, look how great, you know, I'm at the top of Everest, or you've got to, it's showing the way. It's almost being the guide for other people to say, this is how I got to base camp or wherever I am. Yeah. These are the steps that you can learn something from my journey that got me here, because there's no point in us in doing this actually, if we're so far away that it becomes irrelevant to other people. And so my passion for what I'm doing in CDM is, and the reason I did the book, I guess, is because in CDM I look after 60, between 60 and 70 people.
Yeah.
And I try and make it the place they've always wanted to work, try and make it an inclusive place where they can really do their best work. That's what the chapter is all about, and how you get there. And so for me, it's not, I'm doing this while, I'm doing this whilst running a business. For me, they're on top of each other.
Yeah.
This is the business. The people, getting people to feel that they can do their best work, that is my business. And it's actually the most important thing that I do. But if I can, by being part of something like this, help to create that for more people, maybe people I've never met, that's kind of legacy stuff. That's stuff that I'm proud of, and I can go. And so anybody watching or anybody who reads the book, we have at CDM a really robust inclusivity and diversity way of. We've got what we call a playbook. So this is how we did it. This is how we set ourselves up. That for me is open source. If you want to, so anyone watching, anyone who reads the book, if you want to borrow that, then get in touch and I'll send you a PDF, because there are lots of things about my business that I don't want you to know, because we do stuff better than you. But this isn't one of them. This is not one of them. This is one that the more that we can share it out, the better the world will be, the more included people will be, and ultimately the better world we will create for the people that are around and the people yet to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Phil, thank you for offering that resource. And this is exactly why I, gathered such a diverse group of men together, for all those reasons that you just said. And it makes my heart so happy to hear you say that, because we are a diverse world. And, I do talk about this in the intro to the book about, there's this movement to have more women on boards and more women in C-suite positions. But the thing is, if they have to adopt this toxic masculine mindset, then we're just perpetuating the issue. And but how many men also are on boards and in C-suite positions and in any position who think that they've got to be, adopt. Put the mask on, all of this kind of, this toxic mindset. And there's just, it's rife. And it was really my intention to make it global, to bring together as many different men from different backgrounds and different generations as well. I mean, Dimmy's the youngest author in the book. He's 33. So he's a young millennial.
I remember 33 vaguely. I certainly wasn't. I tell you what, I certainly wasn't writing chapters in a book like this, man. I really, real respect to you for being out there. I was if I look at the man I was at 33, I was at the beginning of it. I wasn't even at base camp at this point. So I think that's, and I do think, to your point, or part of your point, Sarah, the fact that I think the generation behind me are catching me up. I'm catching, so I think they're getting to this stuff way, way, way quicker. The idea of, as gender break, as the idea of the binary idea of gender breaks down, if you go into schools now, it's not a given that someone is male or female. And actually, my younger child, who's 7, by the time he gets to my age, he will look back and go, God, did people really used to think there was just men and women? And I'll be like, yeah, they did for ages. That will seem as ridiculous as to him as homosexuality being illegal does to me.
Yeah.
We all move on. But I think your point around I think all too often feminism can be just kind of the patriarchy repackaged. So be stronger, lean in, be more resilient. And so there's loads of things about how to, about women the responsibility on women to do those things, lean in, be stronger, be heard, as opposed to men going, shut up, lean back, create and men creating space for women to thrive rather than women having to push in the way. And that's, like I said, that was my way into diversity and inclusivity, or the other way around. But that's the same for everything,
And that's a great place to go into your chapter and talk a little bit about it more, because actually you shared several ideas about it throughout the conversation so far. But in general, if you walk us through the chapter, can you just give us a little bit of an overview of what is your message there actually in regards to inclusivity and vulnerability?
I think the message for me is that I work in a business. A lot of people do, but I work in a business where it's a service industry, effectively. So we work for our clients. We don't make something physical. What we make comes out of the brains of the people. And so the old way of looking at it, which was my way for a while, was, well, if it's all about the brains of the people, let's just hire some great people, right? Let's hire the best people we possibly can. And so I did that for a bit. But yes, you can hire great people, but if those great people don't bring their best ideas out, or don't feel that they can try something, innovation means failure, and failure, if they don't feel there's the safety, the emotional safety to come and say something, is this a stupid idea? This is kind of, or get into lots of groupthink. You get into lots of like, well, this is what happens here, so I won't bring my point of view in. And suddenly you've got people who aren't bringing their best ideas out. And so for me, that idea of feeling safe to be myself, to be totally authentic and bring my whole self to work, that's what I need to get into all of the people in the agency. And that is where inclusivity starts. So the inclusivity that I don't care where you're from, who you sleep with, what your background is, how you think, how you dress, all of that stuff. As long as you can be clear, we have some very clear values at CDM. Those are almost the rules, if you like.
Yeah.
But as long as everyone can as long as everyone shows those values in their behaviors, then bring that individuality to work. Because by definition, the things that make you guys different and a little bit weird are the things that we don't have in the agency. So I want everyone's little bit of individuality, a little bit of weirdness to be brought out, because by definition, that's what we don't have. And the more diverse ways of thinking, the better the work will be. And so it took me a while to get my head around that. And we were kind of doing it before I realized what we were doing. But the idea of inclusivity, it's not a nice to have for me. It is the central business strategy. It's getting brilliant people and getting them to feel they can do their very best work. And at the same time as that, by doing that, you create, I think, I also talk in the chapter about this idea of community. I think different than it used to be 100 years ago, or even 50 years ago, especially in the big cities where our big offices often are. People don't know their neighbors like they used to. There isn't that sense of community spirit. And so I believe that in order for people to feel safe and do their best work and all those things, there has to be an element of community in the organization as well. And so you don't have to, in the same, it's kind of like your neighbors. You have to know that they're going to give you, that they're going to support you and respect you and all those things. You don't have to be best friends with them, but you have to know that there is a sense that we are supporting each other. And I think COVID has made that even more important. And so we do, as part of Omnicom, we do engagement surveys every 6 months. And we've had the best results of people being engaged in business through COVID than we've ever had. And actually, the work that we did before, that was about making sure that people can do their best work and feeling supported and feeling connected, that has been our strength through COVID. So It's ended in the business results. So there's no point in doing all of this stuff as a nice to have, as the soft measures. And I've been told that a lot through my career, that this is just, yeah, this is great. Show, not in so many words, but fine, you do that if you want to do that. Show me the money.
Yeah.
And what I believe, and what we are now showing, is that you do that bit right, that is the money. That's how you get to it, and you can't get to it unless you do that. And if you do, you can't. It will not sustain, because I've done that too, where I got great people, put them together, and then it just didn't quite mesh, and there was a big bump, and then it kind of didn't work. I was like, what the hell? And even at CDM, the first couple of years, we had a huge growth spurt, and engagement went, and so we went from being a failing, not a particularly successful business, let's say, to a very successful, very profitable business and winning creative awards, and engagement went down. And I was like, what? And so I had to kind of, if I believe that getting this right up front is the ultimate endpoint, and as a result of that, actually, you can see we didn't have everything in place. We didn't have those values as set as we needed to. We didn't have the inclusive thinking and the individuality. We allowed some behaviors that we probably shouldn't have done. And guess what? The engagement dropped, and a year later, so did the profit. And so did the revenue. So we had to go, right, okay. And then from that point of getting it right, it's continued, and the success has come, and the growth has come, et cetera, et cetera. And that is my responsibility, is ultimately to those people at Wall Street, really. I don't come to work to make money for them. Don't tell anyone, but I don't come to work. That's not my purpose in life. My purpose in life at the moment is I want the people who work at CDM to always remember the time that they've had. I want it to be the most amazing, like the place they've always wanted to work. I want them to look back on it at the end of their career and go, yeah, I've had a great time, but God, that time at CDM was just incredible, wasn't it? And I want them to take bits of it wherever I want to look back in however many years when I eventually put my slippers on. I've actually got slippers on now. But at the end of my career, in a big leather armchair, loads of leather-bound books, perhaps a pipe, and look around and see loads of people who were at CDM who took some of that and took it to where they went. And if I could look around and see some of the leaders of my industry that come from the CDM we have now, and that they've taken some of the attitude and the inclusivity as a business strategy and taken it to where they've gone, that's legacy stuff for me. That'll make me happy as I sip my cocoa before bed.
Absolutely. It sounds like you've got a whole book in you, Phil.
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. You have so much wisdom in this direction, because actually, I said it once, but it's about the practice you have. You have been doing that, and it's amazing to hear a leader to talk about this, Phil, honestly, because so many organizations, they don't have this kind of leaders. If I ask someone, do you think that people above you care about you? I am sure that not just here in Bulgaria, but in most places, they're going to say no. They're going to say no because they know that that what people care, on the above, they just care about the money and about the results. And of course, this is part of the game. We know that it's important. But when it's the whole thing, when it just push you to do things without caring about you, I don't see actually how is that working, honestly. But it's out of fear-based, right? That's the idea. But when you hear someone like you, like leader, you have 60, 70 people below you to talk about this, that can be really a place where everyone would want to work. If I tell, the people my age, they want to work a leader like you, man, not like the others, because they want to be in a place where they really feel accepted, and they feel that they can really bring out all of what they have inside, and they're gonna do it when they feel accepted, embraced,
Yeah.
and motivated in this way.
Yeah, I mean, but that's also when I say it's central to business strategy. I want us to be that because we're in a talent business. And it's super tough. It seems to be incredibly tough and everywhere. It feels like there's a group of people that have kind of left the industry almost. So it's the battle for when you find talented people and want to get them to want to come and work for, it's actually all of the stuff that we've done so far has been internally focused. I'm not doing it. I'm doing it because it's right for us and right for our people and right for our business. But I think you're right that increasingly it's kind of, actually, I think people would want to know about this. And so it's going to become something that is a reason why we're an employer, an employer of choice. It's Absolutely. The reason why people would want to come and work for us. So I do think over time we'll start to actually use it as a bit of promotion. It's kind of nice that way round, do it and go, actually, people would want to hear about this rather than talking about something with an ulterior motive. But I think I've learned that it's not, it's the way that I think and it's the way that I work. And it's what makes me happy and content. I've been at CDM for 7.5 years, nearly 8 years. I've never worked anywhere for this long. And I've been supported to run the business the way I think the business should be run. And I'm really happy and content in a way that I've never been before at work. And I'm not going anywhere. So I've also had, I've learned it from some of the people that I've worked for at this organization. My first boss here is a guy called Eric Berkeley. Hello, boss, if you're watching.
Shout out to Eric.
Who's taught me about the power, the impact and the power of love as a leadership strategy. And so it happens, we connected on lots of different levels. We get on very well. We've got the same sense of humor. We both like hip hop. So there were all these little connections, but I think he sort of, without necessarily saying it to me, the way that I got love, actual like filial love from him, I kind of thought, that I get so much from that and so much support that actually that helped in my journey of understanding that for other people. And I do feel that I'm really lucky in my organization. If we go, the people who eventually in Wall Street, the investors in Wall Street, I'm sure some of them are lovely, but I'm sure a lot of them don't really care about me. But I do feel that within my part of the organization, I'm really lucky to have people who do believe this stuff, who do care about people. Now, I think I'm fortunate in that I'm in a small enough business that I can try things, and I have a lot of autonomy. And I think I'm also in that generation coming behind them and pushing them. But I don't have people. I have in the past people, as I say, people saying, all right, all this soft stuff is fine. I don't have that at the moment. I have the people going, what you're doing is great and do more of it. And it's great. But I have to say, that's because the business results are going. It's because it's working.
It's working. That's the deal.
If the revenue was going down, no one would care about it. And rightly so. Because I'm running a business. I'm not running a youth club. But if I can run a business based on this and show that it's, then let's get that out as that, and that's the message of the message of my chapter is, if you've not done it, then and you're still successful, how robust or how enduring will that success be? Is it sustainable? And more importantly, for the individual reading it as they're reading the words, is how do you feel? Because I go into we had our summer party a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't really summer, but it was a party. And to just stand in the middle of people and feel that connection, was so emotional, and I felt, you know, I encourage people to find a way to feel that, because trust me, it feels great. It feels great knowing that you're being totally genuine, that you're totally yourself. You know, there is no work Phil, home Phil. I'm just me. I'm trying to balance that sort of over the last 18 months. Brutal honesty, incredible hope. This is where we are. I don't know where we're going, but we stick together, and this is what we achieve together. And so it's you know, there's a lightness. When I was at previous companies, I was, you know, these lines here from my previous company. I don't think I've added any from the last 4 or 5 years of really understanding and getting this right. You know, I feel there's a lightness, and that's what I want people. I think if people go through all the different chapters of the book, they're not going to get all of them. They're not all of them are for them almost.
Yeah.
But whoever you are, there's something for you in this, I think. If you want to really challenge yourself and be super spiritual, like your chapter, Dimi, which was really, I mean, it goes beyond where my head was, then there's something really spiritual in there for you. If you want to learn from someone's experience, there's something in there from like Alan's chapter at the end. It's amazing. And if you want some some practical steps to get there, there's something in there. And so I would just say, go and find it. Don't worry about the ones that don't connect with you, because they're not for you. But there's one in there that's going to connect.
And that's a great message to finish with, Phil. It was really great, and thank you for your wisdom. Thank you, Sarah, for being with us. And we are going and just having a great day, all of us. And whoever is watching, thank you for watching. Thank you for being with us. And watch it again, because you have a lot of things to learn from this guy. So
should we do a quick fist bump for everybody again?
Let's go. Bye.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Dimi.
Yeah.
Bye.
Ciao.